Hola, soy Tomás Cortés. Recuerda que en HRpreneur vamos a hablar de emprendimiento, cultura, diversidad, transformación digital, innovación, agilidad y todo aquello que está revolucionando las áreas de capital humano y en consecuencia a las organizaciones. No olvides abrochar tu cinturón, ya que en este viaje vamos a trascender nuestros límites y navegar más allá de nuestra razón, profundizando en la aplicación de nuestro propósito superior. Esperamos que este episodio te ayude para seguir generando grandes ideas y bienestar para todos los que te rodean. ¡Arrancamos! Welcome back to HRpreneur, the podcast where we challenge conventional HR thinking and explore what actually works in the evolving world of work. I'm your host, Tomás Cortés, and today we are tackling a fundamental but often overlooked question. Are we solving the right problem before implementing HR technology? Organizations are investing millions in HR tech, AI-driven recruitment tools, applicant tracking systems, automated onboarding platforms, but many still struggle with engagement, adoption, and measurable impact. The truth is, technology isn't a silver bullet. The real transformation happens when we design the right process first. To help us unpack this, I'm thrilled to be joined by two incredible experts. Liza Etienne, I hope that I am pronouncing good the surname. Okay, let me introduce. Liza is the CEO of Leica Collaborative. She's an expert at simplifying and scaling organizations and has extensive experience partnering with visionary leaders to navigate disruption and build legacies. Her secret sauce: removing organizational silos and building simplified value streams and experience. Liza, welcome to this podcast of HRpreneur, and I'm sure that our audience will be so happy to listen to your advices to this topic.
Thank you, Tomás. It's a pleasure meeting you.
And our second guest is Dawn. I know, community, that you know Dawn because we invite Dawn in previous episodes in our podcast. And I'm going to make a quick introduction. He's an expert in HR process design, talent experience, and cultural transformation. She's passionate about creating human-centered systems that prioritize employee experience and over administrative efficiency. Dawn, great to have you here again. Thanks, Dawn, for accepting this invitation.
Thanks for having me back, Tomás. Very excited to be here.
Well, but before to start, community, I don't know, Liza or Dan, would you like to add something more in your credentials? Because I know that your credentials are good in the human HR space.
No, I'm ready to just dive into the topics, Tomás.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's start with a fundamental truth. Organizations often rush into technology adoption before fully understanding their pain points. Liza, you have worked with so many companies on employee tech strategies. Why does this happen? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one reason this happens is the shiny new object syndrome. So see a shiny new object, they take it and they run with it. And then, but there's three scenarios that lead up to this mistake. And the mistake number one is working in departments and silos. And you've got silos both vertically within organizations, vertically, and then horizontally across departments. And that oftentimes leads to, yes, this department wants this tool, that department wants the other tool. And then the second reason that this happens, and then in the process, they accrue technical debt for other departments. And that leads to the second scenario of why this happens, is that you get all of this technical debt that is so hard to scale from there. Does that make sense, Tomás?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for those recommendations and explain what this is going to happen. And Dawn, from your perspective, what is the impact of implementing tech without fixing process first?
So I think it's the people impact, right? It is the people impact internally as well as externally, right? Sometimes organizations will purchase tech and think it's going to fix everything, especially for the external candidates, but they forget about the talent they already have inside, right? They forget about asking for employee referrals and how that process goes, or internal mobility and how that process goes, or succession planning and the promotions process. So when they're looking at tech, they have to look at it from their whole entire candidate pool and talent pool that they have available, internal and external. So having manual process for everybody inside, but doing automated process outside does not help the experience overall.
To understand this more, because I know that the talent is the first piece of the puzzle, but yeah, at this moment I have seen a huge amount of new technologies from Workday, from Success Factors, and other new tools coming out into the talent space. But there is a McKinsey study that found that 70% of the digital transformations fail because organizations focus on tools instead of people. What questions, with your experience, should HR leaders be asking before investing in new tech? Liza, could you please show us about these secret sauce that you offer to your clients? Just a little bit, because I know that if they want to know more, well, they need to pay for that.
Yes, no, those are great questions. Some key questions that leaders should be asking. I would start with the top one is, what's our collective organizational strategy? Everything should line up to a strategy. And then aligning things like tech, like data, like customer and employee experiences, where do they fit into the strategy? And then how are they prioritized against other things that align to the strategy? So that would be like the first question that I would ask. The second one is, how do we measure the positive and the negative energy that we're using across teams to survive or to make this ecosystem work? Because you want to be able to, that leads to your prioritization of things. And then I would say the third one that we often ask leaders is, how do we continually simplify and scale your ecosystem, whether that's people, process, data, technology? It's not just about a department evolving and growing, it's about the whole organization.
And down, could you explain a little bit what problem are we actually solving with this? Who are our stakeholders? What does this align with our business goal? How will we measure? And I don't know, with these questions that also Liza shared with us, it's important to have in mind that putting people first, as we have mentioned, is the main topic to really be successful implementing a good technology in our companies. But could you elaborate more about these three topics?
Sure. So I think exactly what you said, Tomás. You have to think about the people, right? Because no matter if a candidate, and that could be internal candidate or external candidate, is someone actually that gets the job, gets the promotion, whatever internally, right? It's how they're taken care of throughout that process. So understanding what your business strategy is and the problems you're trying to solve or the issues you're trying to solve with technology, you have to think about the people impact, right? And the people impact, regardless, again, if they're hired or not, because they still carry your brand forward. And the experience that they have throughout the interview process, throughout the application process, throughout the rejection process, right? Or if, as so many organizations have experienced in the last couple of years, especially, if you have an exit process happening within your organization, how people are taken care of in every step of that process is how they're going to take your brand and communicate it out in the marketplace. And that will impact not only potential candidates in the future, your current employees and what they're seeing out there, but also potential clients. So I think you have to make sure that you're aligned in what you're trying to solve. Make it very simple and clean. You know the problems you're trying to solve, you know who's going to be impacted, and you know how you're going to measure if it's being impactful or not.
Yeah, Tomás, I would 100% agree with Dawn. She nailed it. And I think it's also the alignment of aligning, here's your employee experience, but then taking that and aligning it to what is your customer experience. because oftentimes the most simplest customer experiences can be extremely complicated behind the scenes to be able to deliver that. So you want to make it super simple for your employees to leverage and use their superpowers, but you also want to make it super simple for your customers to continue engaging with your brand. And the two need to join up.
Okay, got it. And with that in mind, I came across with one of the main questions that someone here in Monterrey, in Mexico, asked me about these changes that we will have to implement before too late to move into the new topic about the human-centered design in HR. But one of these colleagues asked me, and maybe you could offer a better overview about that, is that why companies in LATAM, especially in LATAM market, and I don't know if this happens because I have seen more appetite in the United States about to start the process with building all this strategy framework in the companies, but in Mexico, we are, or Mexico and LATAM, we used to think more about in the delivery that we can offer in that way, talent acquisition, the planification of the activities, or the leaders think about, well, we are not filling out 50 or 70 positions, and we need to fill out those positions. But when someone proposed to make some changes, they say, well, the main objective is to fill those positions. But what about the strategy? What you can tackle that kind of mindset to really put process first, build all this framework in the strategy, and put the people in the center of the strategy? I don't know if you could offer us a kind of advice in this topic before to jump into the second part of the human-centered design in HR.
So Tomás, just to feed it back to you, is your question around, are they're just looking at numbers and filling the pipeline? Yes.
Filling the pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times we see this pattern over and over and over again across organizations, folks using and leaders using numbers as vanity metrics rather than actionable metrics. So if you're looking at it, it's like, hey, we just need to build or get talent lined up to jobs in a pipeline. That's a very transactional metric, and it's very, it could be perceived as a vanity metric, because what's actionable, it's like, what is your company's ethos? What is your culture? Mm-hmm. What is the value system that your organization aligns to? What is the strategy that is going to get you into that next chapter and evolve your organization? And then back up into then what are the data points that we need to line that up to see that vision into a reality?
Tomás, I'll add to that I think data is such a quote unquote scary thing for so many people, right? Mm-hmm. In business, right? Because sometimes data is used as a negative, where really you should be utilizing data points as a positive and what it can tell you before things happen and where you can actually identify trends. So I think part of the other missing piece of what Liza was talking about is understanding what your business strategy is, but also agreeing on what maybe the 4 or 5 core data points are. Mm-hmm. And do they mean the same thing to everybody in the organization, right? Because you might have a strategy and this number might mean something for TA, but it's so aligned to the operations side of the business. Well, does that mean the same thing for TA or for HR or for operations or for sales, right? So how is that one core data point and what does it mean to everyone? So if you talk about talent and human resources, let's talk about pipeline, for example, of candidates. You look at every level of the pipeline and every step, but what's equally important is the conversion rates between each one of those steps, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because it doesn't make any sense, or it's time wasted if you continue to fill the top of the pipeline, but you don't pay attention to all those other steps, because it's just wasted time and wasted work. So I think it's also aligning to what everybody thinks those points are and what they actually mean to them. Otherwise, you'll just be spinning your wheels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a great point, Don. And that's true. Kind of going back to our original conversation of silos. I like that. The one data point in one area can mean a very different data point for another group.
Got it. I appreciate to ask this question. It will be so valuable for our community. And well, let's shift gears. And if tech isn't the first step, what is down? What does a great HR process look like before technology enters the conversation?
You know, I think, again, you'll keep hearing it from me. You have to go back to the people. What are you trying to do? So it's inside or outside, external client, internal client. You have to understand what your workflow is, right? So
Got it.
how do you want someone taken care of? What is the best practices for your business? And every step of the process, right? For an external candidate, and that process from the very top of the funnel, right? That very first time you're looking for someone, all the way through the process of them being hired. But then also the employee referral process, the internal mobility process, the exit process, the onboarding process. What each documented step do you need from a candidate care perspective? Again, think about, they're carrying your brand. So does that brand that you're building out, is it strong in each step of that process? So that if someone comes through that process on the other side and isn't hired, is it going to be a positive experience? So once you have that documented, then you can start actually looking at your HR tech options and finding out who actually plugs in each piece of that to address that. But you've got to have that process down first, and agreement on the process to make sure that it's right.
Perfect. And Lisa, would you like to add something,
Yeah.
please?
Absolutely, yes. And I like how Don lined up the process, because on the product development side or on the marketing side, that process is your customer journey. What is that journey? How are you mapping not only the emotions that customers are feeling, but what is their need in that point of the employee journey? And then what happens behind the scenes with your entire workforce and your people, data, process, technology, everything pulling together to meet that need of that customer in that particular micro moment or macro moment in the journey. And it's, again, similar to what Don said, I echo it. It's all about removing those friction points in your experience design, whether it's for your employees or for your customers, and making sure that they're really aligned and that it's intuitive. I think that's the key word, is intuitive.
Intuitive. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Got it. And so for what I understanding, so instead of asking which tech should we buy, companies should ask, what experience do we want to create?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. And then map in your process, and
Okay.
then understand your requirements from all these different teams, breaking down silos, understand all these requirements, and then start making decisions around what technology meets the greatest needs and gets your greatest return on investment.
Yeah, because I was thinking, if we only think in a tech perspective, we could fail to in the future, and that, oh, we thought that we buy this great technology, but what we are not solving the problems that it's both the technology are gonna solve. Okay.
Well, and you're also shifting the role of your IT team when you're doing that. If HR wants one tool and marketing wants a different tool and your operations team wants a different tool, that shifts the value that IT is bringing to their, like, bubble gumming and duct taping everything together. They're building these systems to talk to each other versus having a strategic seat at the table for IT where they can inform, like, okay, here's how we set up, having the bandwidth to be able to think through the future of your company. And to be able to focus on scaling and simplifying your business rather than trying to connect all these different disparate systems together.
Got it. Yeah.
Tomás, can I have one other thing to piggyback on what Lisa's saying? I think there's a really big thing that organizations miss when they're looking at their HR tech. It might be HR tech or TA tech or whatever you want to say, right? The people space, however you want to say it. But they don't have the right people in the decision-making process, right? So if it's TA, right, have a recruiter who's going to live in the system all day long. If it's somebody who's going to help implement it, have the implementation member team in there, have the IT person to figure out, does it connect with the other technologies they have? Understand who needs to be using the system most effectively and efficiently, right? Because you don't want to buy tech just for the sake of buying it because it's expensive.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
and it's a cost that takes a lot of time typically to get approval for, right? Because it is an investment. So
yeah.
make sure that the people that are going to be using it and impacted by it every day, you don't have to have the whole team involved. Have one person, right? Because it does a couple of things. Number one, it gives you the insight of the people who are living in it every day. And now think about it from an employee development opportunity. How phenomenal is it to ask a recruiter from the team to be involved in such a impactful, big ticket item for the organization, and their voice is being heard and they're at the table. So it's just as much an employee development opportunity as making sure the right tool is being chosen.
Got it.
Well,
Got it.
exactly, because if you don't meet the employee needs, then all of a sudden you've got all these employees trying to find workarounds. And that's what they're spending their energy doing rather than moving your company forward.
Got it. With these amazing comments, I came across with this study by the MIT Sloan that found that organizations that prioritize employee experience before digital transformation see 2.4 times greater financial performance compared to those that don't. So this isn't just an HR issue. It's a business strategy, as you are commenting in this conversation. No? Got it. Okay. See, community, we are learning a lot from these amazing experts, and I hope so one day they are coming to Mexico to share more with us on site. Let's see what is going to happen in the future. But in the meantime, we are going to continue discussing these topics with my guests. Well, let's make this real. I would love for each of you to share a kind of case study, one where HR technology was implemented successfully and one where it went wrong. Could you share these topics? And don't reveal, the name of the companies, just to share a case of the study and how did you solve this?
And I would say, and I'll use an example of a technology implementation that was more holistic than just HR, because we're all about like breaking down the silos, looking at the whole enterprise transformation. And this was a global transformation across 3 theaters. So it was Asia Pacific, the European theater, and then the Americas. And why it was successful is out of the gate, we got executive alignment. We had leaders lining up on here's what your North Star is for the organization. Here's our vision. Here's where we want to go. And then we were also working, it was representing 8 different brands. So we had to align brand leaders across those 8 different brands. So we set expectations with them as well. We aligned those expectations with what C-suite leaders were expecting. We would also have quarterly check-ins with the C-suite leaders and the division chairs of all of the different brands. And then we set up an annual plan where we went brand by brand by brand. One of the requirements that they had was that 80% of whatever we created in this replatform had to be reused by all the other brands, because it was all about simplifying and scaling. We ran a full year of sprints, 2-week sprints, without missing a single deadline. And it was a beautiful, beautiful designed outcome as part of the process.
Got it. Thank you, Liza. Thank you. And Dan, could you share with us a failure or learning experience in this topic?
Sure. Sure. So I think from the ATS standpoint, right? So I'm going to live in that for these 2 examples. So I think the first was an absolute positive, and it was for an external client that actually did do the pre-work that I talked about earlier. They did make sure they were aligned, and it was very high volume hiring. They had the people in the room that needed to be in the room to make the decisions. And then they chose the right technology. And they had a formal implementation process where, again, all the people were in the room. They brought people on site to do the biggest chunks of work and do live working sessions, right? Write out the workflows on the board, understand who's impacted. And then they also did virtual things. So it was a phenomenal launch and implementation, very smooth. all ATS system implementations have bumps, don't get me wrong, but that was very smooth. From an internal aspect and launching an ATS, a not so positive experience was an organization purchasing a product off the shelf and deciding that they were going to implement it versus actually having the support system of the product success team. So they purchased the box product, they were going to implement it, and ultimately what ended up happening was there were things that the system could do that because they didn't understand that, they had the functionality but didn't know it did it, right? So they were trying to create processes to actually solve it where the system already could do it, but no one understood that and no one knew it. So because they didn't have the proper mapping, the proper process, the right people in the room, the support system there, they had purchased this product and they weren't utilizing it, right? They weren't utilizing it to its fullest because they just didn't know what they didn't know.
Got it. And with these reflections, something that I was thinking when I was listening, it's that as we start this podcast, that technology is only a piece of the puzzle. And in a holistic view, if we are creating this puzzle, well, I love that it's a reminder that the technology is only an amplifier and it makes good processes better and processes worse depending on the different things that we need to consider in implementing the technology. And especially as Liza and you have been mentioned, that we need to align the technology, no matter in which different area, marketing, TA, finance, we need to align technology with business needs. And especially in these moments in which companies are creating the roadmaps 2025, 2023, because here in Mexico, at least a lot of executives has been starting doing the strategy for the long vision in the future of the company. I don't know if you would like to add some more key takeaways, or we can jump into the new other topic in this conversation.
I would add one thing. I think, sometimes it's taking a step back, slowing down, right? Because especially tech is constantly changing, right? Yeah. And organizations hiring, it ebbs and flows. And when it goes down, everybody pulls back. When it goes up, everybody's running with their hair on fire, right? So understanding and being smart about the impact of what technology can do for you, right? What I will say is this, and I always line by this, having the right people and the right jobs doing the right work at the right time. That needs to be your constant, and understanding that. Bringing in tech to help people work smarter, work more efficiently, have more personal and professional growth so that they become your succession plan when you need them. Use tech to its highest ability as well, but align it in each one of those steps of the process to make sure you're getting as much out of it as what you're spending.
And one question that comes to my mind when I was listening is, what do the companies need to do if the people is not ready to adopt this technology? We need to train, but what about if these people doesn't want to adopt those trainings? And I was thinking, because sometimes we are so confused to think in a human-centered company. What the leaders needs to do? They need to spend time with the people inside of the company, or they will need to take the hard decisions to decide to leave this company outside of the organization. What are your recommendations with that?
Yeah, and that's the foundation of change management. It's finding that trust, finding that transparency, I think, is another important one. And it's also understanding what is the root cause. I mean, yes, it is natural for people not to want to change, but you need to be able to understand the why behind it. Is it, again, they don't trust their leaders, or vice versa, leaders don't trust their employees? Is it oftentimes you find within an organization somebody down in a delivery team that may understand a more nuanced piece of it, and understand why it would not work that way. And so if you get to that root cause of like, well, why won't it work that way? Then give me an idea for some other way that it could work. But that all takes vulnerability, trust, and transparency within an organization, and it be part of the DNA.
Got it.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lisa.
and Tomás, I'll add to that. It's all rooted in communication,
Got it.
right? It's all rooted in communication. So consistency in the messaging, having the backing from the C-suite and the executive team, having people, again, I'll go back to the example of having a recruiter when you're researching ATS systems, having a recruiter as part of the team that's making the decision, right? So having that buy-in from people that are actually using the system. And it's consistency, and it is consistency, and it's consistency, right? Making sure that messaging is done on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, doing a check-in with people. Is it working well for you? What's not working now, right? You don't just communicate and launch out a new process or a new system. You have to ask people how it's going, right? Otherwise, if something's not going well, and if people don't feel comfortable lifting their voice and saying it out loud, then it just becomes this negative growth inside that takes on a life of its own. You have to ask, you have to communicate, you have to stay connected.
Well, and I would also add, you also have to stay true to your process. For example, in an agile process, oftentimes the first thing that people get rid of is the retrospective. And that retrospective is so valuable for technical teams to be able to, on a weekly basis, build that trust, or bi-weekly basis, of what's working, what's not working, what do we need to course correct on.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, thanks. I appreciate this answer. And well, moving forward with the future of HR tech. Fast forward 5 years, what trends in HR tech will reshape how we work? What are you seeing right now in the HR space, and what will you see in the future, Lisa and Dan?
A lot of like trends that we're seeing are values-based organizations. So taking a deeper dive into what are those values for that organization. We're also seeing a lot of, and I would say candidates are also looking for employers that have different values and that align with theirs. You're also hearing a lot more on topics like stacked licensing. Like, do you really need, for example, in the medical field, do you really need all these years and years and years of licenses, or can you do smaller chunks along the way and get people into the workforce faster? Those are examples. You also start to see just these bigger convergences coming together. And then, of course, there's always climate risk is another trend that we see.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And Dan, would you talk about AI or another topics that will impact HR tech in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a topic I am talking to people about constantly, right? AI.
Yeah.
AI, and how is it going to impact talent? So many people are worried about losing their jobs because of AI. And I tell everyone, yes, of course, there's always things that impact talent acquisition and HR, and roles move in and out depending on the volumes, as we just talked about. However, I think what it's going to focus on is making people work smarter, right? So you've got AI to do some of that tactical work. So now you can take more one-on-one time with your candidates, more one-on-one time with your employees. You can build a better and a simpler and a cleaner onboarding experience for people. You can make sure that your job descriptions actually relate and reflect more with what you're trying to hire. You can use AI for all of those pieces. So again, it's another tool, right? It's like all the technologies throughout the last umpteen years that have come in to impact the TA and HR space. It's using it more effectively and more efficiently within your processes and with your people.
Got it. Okay, perfect. There is a Deloitte report that predicts 85% of jobs in 2030 haven't been invented yet. If that is the case, how do we design HR systems that are future-proof?
Well, and this is our favorite space. I love the innovation and the how do you start to future in things.
Yeah.
And the foundation that you need to do that is to simplify and scale. And then you've got to be able to have those regenerative and evolved workforces that have the trust in their leaders to use their superpowers to get there. And to start looking then for generations to come, like what's the impact today, but what's the impact down the line?
Got it.
Lots of really cool ways to collaborate and innovate and even like reduce waste in the system too.
Yeah, I with that on mind, these key points is workforce agility, continuous learning, and adaptability. Is that right, Dan?
Absolutely. So I think you can use systems to the fullest to impact all of those pieces, right? Why spend the money and the time? It's way more expensive and takes way more time to actually bring someone from externally into the company, onboard them, train them. Like, how long does it take before you're seeing impact from that external talent versus if you actually maximize the talent inside that you already have, understand the true skills that they have other than the job they're doing today, right? So their job title might be recruiter or sales representative, but what else do they know how to do, right? What else do they know how to do? What else do they want to do? What are their passion areas? What else can they bring to your business? So rather have somebody who loves your business and loves your brand already and wants to stay with you versus spending the time and the money to bring somebody outside in. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are missing something in your team that you shouldn't bring external talent in. Absolutely you should. But you should definitely assess what you already have to make sure that you're maximizing those folks, because you don't want them to leave, right? You don't want people to leave that love your brand already and want to be there and have the skill sets to actually go. So if you can keep them, work to keep them. Use your technologies, right? Use the technologies to understand succession planning and performance management and doing performance sessions, right? Don't wait to do them once a year or once every 6 months. Do them quarterly, do them monthly. Use the tools you have in front of you as a leader and use the tools you have in front of you as an employee to talk about what you want to do.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, it's an active approach from the employee, because sometimes the employees relies more, oh, what the company have to offer me, it's gonna do for me. But sometimes the employee will have a lot of tools, and in this case, not only in the company, because outside there are more scalable tools to continue learning, to continue improving our skills, but this is an active role that could help us. Also the company or strengthen the skills of the person to decide what he or she needs to move into the future career. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. And Tomas, I would piggyback on both of you too.
Yeah.
Also exploring what are other people passionate about as well, because oftentimes people have the other pet projects or passion projects outside of work, and it may be something that they could bring back in to train others within your organization on how to do that skill set, that it taps your employee base at a very different level.
Yeah, definitely. For example, in my personal experience, although I love HR, well, there is another topics that I love, like innovation, technology, or in 2020, I learned how to produce the podcast because I love to do that. And one of other things that maybe, I don't know if it's a strange or it's a weakness, is that, well, Tomás, you love to talk, and you are a chatterbox. And sometimes I say, well, this is a skill or this is a weakness, but I have seen more as an strength in my position, because I love to do that, and to share this is part of my passion.
Exactly. And then imagine that if your employer then, or any organizations are tapping into those superpowers of their staff and leveraging them then to either pivot roles or keep continuing to evolve that workforce of the future.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I really doesn't want to approaching into the end of this podcast because I would love to continue sharing more topics with you, but this podcast has an end in that case where we are almost at the end of the podcast. But as my community knows, I always love to ask to my guests some personal questions or some things that maybe they could help us to answer. And this is the part in which, before to grab up, I would love to ask you a few rapid fire questions so our listeners can get to know you better. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know that Down knows this exercise in the past, and my plan is not to ask the same question that I asked you, Down, because I would love to ask a different perspectives because Liza is also part of the podcast. In that case, well, first questions: what's one HR myth you wish will disappear forever?
Don, do you want to take that one or?
Sure. HR is a partner, not the enemy, right? People are very, I would say a lot of times there's one way or another, right? A lot of people are skittish about HR and everything to do with HR, be it talent acquisition, be it exits, be it benefits, like any of it. And I think HR is your partner. They are there to help make things better for you, more effective for you, but also be aligned to the business, right? And sometimes HR has to follow things because that's what the business needs, but they're there to educate you on the why as well, right? So I really would encourage people. I think that's a lot of times why there ends up being issues in HR and TA is because people just don't want to talk to them or ask them questions because they don't feel comfortable. They're your partner. They're there to help you. They are not someone that is working to make things negative for you.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, do you have something in this question or?
Oh, on the HR, and I would say probably the biggest myth that I'd like to bust is that HR is not the rule enforcer. And it so kind of piggybacks what Don had shared.
Okay.
In my experience, yeah, HR plays that very crucial role in supporting employees and fostering a positive workplace, and it's all about driving that organizational success.
Got it.
Yeah.
And the second fire question, if you could automate one annoying work task forever, what would it be?
Scheduling meetings.
Yeah, the same, especially for the TA. It's annoying, yeah. And what about you, Dan? Do you have something to share in these questions?
I'm going to piggyback on the meeting piece as well, but not necessarily the scheduling part of it as in maximizing it, right? So understanding what the topics are and looking at across how many meetings you have, what are the topics, where are you spending your time, so you can actually simplify, cut back, and make them much more impactful.
Got it.
I like that. And then tying it to your data and your analytics so they can show. I like it.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. What is a book or podcast that's changed the way you think about work? There is something that, as Alan Grant has say in the last book that he published, Rethinking. Do you have something that helped you to rethinking the way that you see the world?
Yeah, I would say on that one, I love that one because I have a lot of favorite books and it's tough to narrow it down to one, but I would say the Climate Action Handbook by Heidi Roop. I love it because it's a really foundational, fundamental way to look at here's all these different industries, here's the impact of the industries, and here's why we should all care about all of them. And it's the quick intersection of the impact that we're all having on our planet.
What about you, Dan?
Yep, I would say onward. It is from the gentleman who actually started Starbucks, and it talks about how they fought for the organization without losing its soul, and it's the life of the organization, right? And it talks about the journey, how wildly successful they were, and then how unwildly successful they were, right? And back and forth throughout the book. And it talks a lot about how they had to get back to the basics of listening to their employees and what was happening out in the actual stores and what wasn't working, right? From how clients, candidates and clients, apologies, how customers were being treated, how the materials they were using and the quality of the materials or the quality of the machines were. It talks about all of it, but it really does go back to listening to their employees and their people and how they had to learn that, right? And how they had to come back to basics.
Good recommendation for our audience. For me also, I will get into my list wish for this 2025. Okay. Okay, and it's impossible to have a time machine to travel into the time like Back in the Future, but I wish that one day we can create that. I don't know, maybe as in the movie, it was a curse for the actors. But one piece of career advice you wish someone gave you earlier in your career, would you share some insights, Liza?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would love. I think it's get into consulting earlier. I love that space, but I also it was a great, wonderful journey to get to that space too. But now knowing what I do, I wish I would have done that earlier.
Oh, got it. Perfect. Have you listened, community? Because consulting is the new normal here in 2025. Please listen this advice. Okay, go down. Sorry for interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's fine. I would say, and I just had a conversation at length about this not too long ago. So good topic and good question, Tomás. I'd say don't worry about people's titles, right?
Oh.
Worry about what you can learn from them, right? I definitely grew up in the business, however you want to say it, with if this person has this title, right? If they're an executive, if they're a CEO, if they're whatever, don't ask questions. Just listen, right? Just listen, or you're not even the person that's in the room to ask questions of those folks because they're at that level and you're not. Forget it, right? That I could have learned far more early in my career if I would have not had that fear because of that, right? And I've coached people, right, for a very long time to forget about that, right? Have respect for people because of their title. Absolutely. They've worked hard to get to where they're at in their career. Absolutely. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am saying is, don't worry about that. Don't be afraid to ask a question of them. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification on something because you don't understand what the business strategy is. But be empathetic to the situation and the position that they're in. So to the earlier point we made about if there's a business strategy or a business decision that's being made, if you don't understand it, ask. But don't think it's being done in spite of everybody else and just at the executive level, right? Ask.
Okay.
They'll tell you what's going on, right? They'll give you more insight. They want people to care about what's going on in the business. So ask the question. I certainly wish I would have done that earlier in my career.
And I piggyback on what Don has said too. I would also say, don't be afraid to raise your hand to volunteer to work on a project. Because oftentimes those leaders, oh yeah, cool, take it. And that's how I got into a lot of the innovation transformation space when I first started my career.
Yeah, maybe when I was thinking in a different guesses that I had, I remember this advice. Just take it. Although you don't know what will be the final result, just take it because that will help you to improve your skills, your abilities, and don't be afraid about that. And that is something that I have been doing in my entire career. And I really be so thankful to have people like you that has been guiding me to really take those risks, because in other hand, I will not be here at this moment speaking with you. And thanks for these insights that you share with us and with me, especially because, as I have mentioned to all my guests, all these podcasts resonate inside of myself, and I create my own journey, and I say, I learned something new, and I'm going to apply to improve my personal skills, not only in my job, because this impact my family or the other roles that I play as a human being. Okay, thanks. Thanks. We are approaching to the end. Thanks, Liza. That was so fun. Thank you both for an amazing conversation. But before we go, where can people connect with you? Where they contact you? I would love that you could share what is the better way to communicate with you.
Yeah, our website is LECA, L-E-C-A, collaborative.com.
Got it.
And we are dimensionaltalentllc.com. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Got
Likewise.
it. Yeah. Yeah, and community, you will find this information into the description of this podcast. Don't worry about that. Or you can re-listen and listening again this podcast. But we are going to share this into our description of the podcast. And for everyone listening, if you are thinking about implementing a new HR system, remember, technology should support your strategy, not replace it. If you enjoyed this episode, share with your network, and let's keep the conversation going. Until the next time, keep pushing the boundaries of HR innovation. Thank you, Liza, again. Thank you, Dan. And I know that our community will be so happy to listen to this conversation. Bye-bye, and thank you.
Thank you, Tomás.
Thanks, Tomás.
Recuerda conectar conmigo en LinkedIn como Tomás Cortés y en Instagram como Tomás H. Cortés. Y cuéntame qué temas te gustaría abordemos en las siguientes semanas. Queremos que HRpreneur sea una comunidad donde puedas aprender a humanizar las acciones de emprendimiento y a la vez romper con el status quo. Ayúdanos a cumplir este propósito y, para poder llegar a más personas, invita a tus amigos para que nos escuchen y nos sigan. Y sobre todo, no olvides dejarnos una reseña desde cualquier plataforma donde nos estés siguiendo para que continuemos creciendo como comunidad. Muchas gracias y nos escuchamos en nuestro próximo capítulo para seguir con nuestra evolución.